We are now on the air. Good morning again. Welcome to the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors meeting for Tuesday, February 23rd. Would you all kindly stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Supervisor Pine? Here. Supervisor Groom?
Present.
Supervisor Horsley?
Here.
Supervisor Tissier? Here. President Slocum?
Here. Thank you. I'm going to move on now to public comment. I have two public comment cards for this section, which is reserved for persons wishing to address the board on any county-related matters that are not otherwise on this meeting agenda, listed on the consent agenda, county manager's report, or regular agenda, or board member reports on the regular agenda. So I have two speaker cards under public comment, and the first is Martin Fox.
Good morning, President Slocum, members of the board, my fellow veteran, Mr. Welty, and County Council, Mr. Byers. Thank you for your service to the county. Please help family members of persons living with serious mental illness who lack the capacity to seek treatment voluntarily and implement Laura's Law now without further delay. Just a few days before the county civil grand jury observed that Laura's Law had not been implemented in San Mateo County on June 18th, a vote was taken, which was subsequently memorialized by repeating some of the same misstatements of fact and misrepresentations of law that were previously rejected in May, and direction was given to have Laura's Law implemented by January 1st. Laura's Law was not implemented on January 1st. However, the county announced that the implementation of Laura's Law had, quote, an expected start date in the spring, without any explanation for the delay. A San Francisco Examiner article that described the use of the Lanner and Peaches Short Act's court-ordered evaluation process, but erroneously suggested Laura's Law was implemented, was published on Sunday, January 24th. The county's homeless service provider identified in the article apparently confused the reporter, who had not heard the LPS court-ordered evaluation process used to oppose Laura's Law in this very chamber on October 18, 2011, and did not know about the intellectually and morally bankrupt policies and procedures used to oppose implementation of Laura's Law for years. Laura's Law is an effective and efficient solution to the problem of untreated serious mental illness that is evidence-based and recommended by both the U.S. Department of Justice and the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration. Please help the family members of persons living with serious mental illness who lack the capacity to seek treatment voluntarily now, lift the veil of secrecy over the surreptitious implementation of court-ordered evaluation, and repudiate the intellectually and morally bankrupt policies and procedures that make it imperative to implement Laura's Law now. Thank you.
Next speaker is Catherine Geary, I think it is.
President Slocum, did you receive my letter for an extended amount of time today?
I don't believe I did, but you'll have 2 minutes.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Catherine M.K. Geary. I'm a cyber journalist. I'm also a musician with Musicians United for Safe Energy, Bread and Roses, as well as the LA Times. To qualify my opinion here, I'm going to tell you that I'm from a family of doctors. My grandfather ran medicine in Washington State during World War II and the Depression, and my uncle was a world-renowned heart surgeon and he was chief of Good Sam for a good 25 years down in LA. I ran into a character, a doctor from World War II as well, and I became a victim of malpractice, which has stayed with me for the past 30 years. Once you become a victim of malpractice, there is no medicine that can help you. There is no therapy that can help you. There is no trusting a doctor. There's no trusting a nurse or a PhD or anyone else. I've been to Stanford for certain procedures, and I'm finding my best bet is Eastern medicine now that I'd fallen victim to the fellow McCormick, who apparently is also the heir to the first patent in the United States, the Thrasher Reaper. He has inherited over 10 billion, 15 billion. They afforded to say they would adopt me. I worked for them. I became a psych tech, and still 30, 32, 33 years later, I am besieged with, shall we say, the effects of the malpractice. Even a simple lie can put you in a headspin for years and years and years. And so to correct this, especially here in San Mateo County, I would like to ask that people keep open minds. There are a rash of viruses, Zika, PTSDs, everything's coming down to the wire here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I have no other speaker cards, so we'll move on to set the agenda and approve the consent calendar.
I'll move to set the agenda and to approve the consent agenda items.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion is set. I actually wanted to just say something, if I could, about item 33, and I don't know if Marlene Finley, the Parks Director, is here, but item 33 on the consent is a matter that funds basically a program that would take youngsters from various communities to a couple of our outdoor parks. And for those kids that obviously live in East Palo Alto and North Fair Oaks, I know from talking to them that a lot of them have never been up to the park, to the Redwoods, and I just wanted to give a shout out to Marlene Finley for undertaking this project, which will, I think, go a long way to showing young people in the county the beauty of being outdoors. So thank you to Marlene Finley. Okay, moving on. We are on item number 1, which is a presentation. It's a proclamation designating February as National Heart Month. And I would make a motion, before I forget, to approve this proclamation, this designation.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passes. So February obviously has Valentine's Day, and Valentine's Day is a lot to do with the heart. But this morning, I wanted to talk for just a moment that about 424,000 people a year experience cardiac arrest and are treated by emergency medical services. The startling fact is that 9,500 of those are children. If you can imagine that. 25% of those treated had no symptoms prior to their episode, and 23% of those who suffer sudden cardiac arrest can be effectively treated by CPR with the use of automated external defibrillators. You might not know this, but my first job in local government was in San Diego County, and at that time we were starting a paramedic program. And I saw firsthand the importance of what the EMS folks do, and having had that experience, have just a profound respect for emergency medical personnel. The really special thing about this morning is we are joined this morning by Serafina Casey and her mother, who's in the second row there, and her father, and some fellow, looks like Girl Scouts, right? Yeah. And Serafina, as you all know, is a sophomore at Menlo Atherton, High School, and she was here several months ago and presented her Pulse Point application, and she is returning this morning. And how she got started on this journey is pretty interesting. She took a CPR class to earn a badge for Girl Scouts, and she got curious about CPR, and one thing led to another. Obviously, she's a technology buff. because she actually set about developing this app, this cell phone app, this smartphone app called Pulse Point. And basically it's an alert system that notifies folks willing to do CPR and trained bystanders when there's a 911 call for a cardiac arrest, that somebody who was there could actually give assistance to the person. Have I got that basically right, Serafina?
Well, I didn't make the app.
Okay. She didn't make the app. Always take credit for these things. And so I would like to invite Serafina, perhaps her mother and her father, up here, and we'll present you with this beautiful proclamation. And you could say a few words, but I think it would be nice if the family could join us.
I'm so excited to be here right now. This is a really big day for all of us. So I'm Serafina Casey, a Girl Scout from Menlo Park, and I accept this proclamation on behalf of all San Mateo County residents and our emergency medical system. I want to thank the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors for the support they have provided as we work together to provide Pulse Point's capabilities to the citizens of San Mateo County. I am proud to have worked with so many dedicated adults who accepted me as part of this team. I would especially like to thank Rich Price of the Pulse Point Foundation, Virginia Chang Corrali of the Menlo Park Fire Protection District, EMS Chief Emil Peakey, Deputy County Manager Mike Callaghy, Nancy Patrice and Garrett at the County EMS office who also work on AED mapping, and Renee Hafiz, my Girl Scout leader. I'd also like to thank the key donors who made this possible: AMR, the Peninsula Healthcare District, and the Sequoia Healthcare District. PulsePoint is a free app. This app will provide an instant alert through our county 911 system to those nearby a victim of sudden cardiac arrest, so they can start CPR in the critical life-saving minutes before an EMS team arrives. PulsePoint can direct citizen responders to nearby AEDs, strengthening the chain of survival. At this time, PulsePoint is especially relevant. I think this is truly a great and innovative way for our county to recognize National Heart Month. My very first PulsePoint meeting, the one that set me on a path to be part of this team, was with Fire Chief Harold Chappell-Howman of Menlo Park. He was so enthusiastic about the Girl Scouts working on this project, and he told us PulsePoint will definitely save lives. I believe Chief Harold is right. I think what this team accomplished today will make the difference between life and death for some of the citizens in this county. An important step has been taken today, but the work for our team goes on. I hope everyone here will help get the word out to drive many of our residents to start using PulsePoint. We need to continue the important work of CPR training programs, and I ask all of you who come across an AED in our county to use the PulsePoint AED app on their smartphone to capture its location for our county database. I am honored to accept this proclamation. Thank you.
Thank you, Serafina. Earlier, Serafina said how excited she was about today, and she said, "I am so ready for this," and you have a lot of enthusiasm there. I would invite Virginia Chang Corrali or one of the folks from the fire district if you wanted to say a few words. I've never known Virginia to be shy, but maybe. I'm sorry, Mr. President. Would you like to say a few words?
Did you join me? Yeah.
Yeah.
As the board president, we're kind of in the same club, Warren, right?
Yeah.
And Supervisor Horsley and myself also sit on the Joint Powers Act for pre-medical too. So we also deal with AMR, not only in the fire district but in the pre-medical Joint Powers Act. So we're very fortunate to have those types of services within our county and the excellent fire services that we have. And it's a program that Virginia had brought to the district, and it's just kind of her and the Girl Scout program. So, Virginia, please.
So thank you, Rob, and thank you to the Board of Supervisors for recognizing an outstanding young woman who has worked so hard and informed so many partnerships with a lot of major stakeholders, not the least of which is the Board of Supervisors. But just to recap really quickly how this all came about, you know, Serafina is a resident of Menlo Park, and at the time she was a freshman at Menlo Atherton High School. And she approached Chief Harold Chappell-Homan about how her Girl Scout troop could deploy Pulse Point countywide. And of course, Harold took it with open arms and asked me if I could help as well. I was the vice president of the board at the time, and so I reached out to the president of the Board of Supervisors at the time, Don Horsley. So I have to thank Don for really helping us get this ball rolling. And I mean, I know that the whole board did a lot, but I think Don, your leadership and in taking us in and working with us was a huge help. So thank you. But I think the main thing is that we see today the deployment of a very important app, and it's in no small part thanks to the Girl Scouts of Menlo Park, and we're so proud of you. And I know that at our March board meeting for the Fire Protection District, we're so excited about giving you a commendation too. So thank you for all that you've done for San Mateo County, and of course your parents who have been undying supporters. You've made a real difference, so thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Virginia. Serafina? Mom, did you want to say something? I'm sorry. Looked like you. That's good. Okay. Thank you, Mom and Dad and family, and Serafina. Thank you for the things that you have done for San Mateo County and for its people. Thank you so much. Okay, now we move on to item number 2, which is the presentation of trophies for the Bay Area Quality Management District San Mateo County Employers Great Race for Clean Air, Supervisor Carol Groom.
Thank you, Warren. Thank you, Mr. President. Supervisor Slocum and I both serve on the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, so we're really pleased today to recognize the Great Race for Clean Air and those folks who excelled during that race. The Great Race for Clean Air is a 2-month competition between Bay Area employers to reduce air pollution by encouraging employees to use commute alternatives such as public transit, carpooling, van pulling, bicycle, and walking. In other words, don't drive. During September and October, 526 employees from 47 companies logged their daily air-friendly commutes and saved approximately 325,700 pounds of carbon dioxide. So the winners were chosen in 3 categories: highest CO2 savings, highest percentage of clean commute days logged, and highest percentage of employee participation. So we're proud today to introduce the winners from San Mateo County. And the first is for the highest overall carbon dioxide savings, second place, Gilead Sciences, and accepting the award is Maria Rangel. Oh, there you are. So it's a very handsome award. Gilead has won a number of times, and we're very pleased with all the work that Gilead does. Thank you so much. And the next is for the highest level of employee participation. And this award was given in 5 different size categories. And in San Mateo, we have 2 winners. Motive Power System took 3rd place in the small business category, and Negrani Yervashi is here. And the Commute.org took 3rd place in the mini category, and Karen Sumner is here. So, Negrani.
My first confession is that I'm not Urvashi Nagrani. I'm her dad, Sham Nagrani. She happens to be in Sacramento talking to the Air Quality Management District over there. Motive is a startup company in Foster City, and this company was started 6 years ago, and we build the powertrain for large electric trucks and buses. So we are very passionate about clean air. Half the company employees take public transport to work or ride bicycles, and some of us who live further out, like me, drive electric cars. So we are very, very passionate about this, and we are very proud to receive this award. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have Karen Sumner from Commute.org. And last but not least is the highest average of clean commute days per participant, and Solazyme Inc. took 2nd place, and Giovanni Antonelli is here today to accept this award. No takers. So thank you to everybody from the Air District who worked hard on this, and to all of the companies who participated. And I hope that the message is that you will more companies and more people will join in trying to reduce our carbon footprint by not driving to work, or at least having a really fuel-efficient automobile. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Supervisor Gruen, and I wanted to thank you also for the appointment to the Air Quality Board. I've been to a couple of meetings now, and it's really important work, and I think at the last meeting we spent a couple hours on wood-burning stoves and incentives, and it was all very interesting. I want to thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay. Glad to have you with me.
Okay, moving on. Item number 4, which is a public hearing to, or I'm sorry, item number 3, I skipped one there. Item number 3, which is accept the Measure A Oversight Committee's annual report. And is it Raina or Juan or? Raina.
Good morning, Mr. President, members of the board. I'm pleased to be here today to present the annual report on Measure A from the Measure A Oversight Committee. I do want to recognize we have 2 Oversight Committee members here today. We have our Vice Chair, Sam Hutkins, and we also have Naomi Patridge here today. So I want to thank them for their service. So some background on Measure A and the Oversight Committee. The Measure A half-cent sales tax passed in November 2012. It required the appointment of an Oversight Committee, 2 members from each of the supervisorial districts. So the charge of the committee is to perform an annual audit of Measure A receipts. And the bylaws also require that the committee review the spending of Measure A as well as performance progress. And annually, we submit a report to the Board of Supervisors. This is our 2nd annual report. So again, I want to thank the Oversight Committee for all of their time over the last several months on reviewing all of the audits and the performance reports. So the process this year started on December 3rd. We had a meeting of the Oversight Committee where we had the Controller's Office present the annual audit of receipts as well as the agreed upon procedures on spending. And we also spent some time going through each of the initiatives and presenting on the performance of Measure A spending. Subsequent to that, the committee created a subcommittee on looking at performance measures. That's another role and responsibility in the bylaws, is to take a look at performance measures and make recommendations to our office on any improvements. We did meet with a subcommittee in January and have incorporated all of those changes in the performance report. And today we bring to you the annual report for your approval. So high level on the annual report, the controller found no exceptions in the audit of receipts and the review of spending. We are meeting 66% of our goals for all Measure A initiatives through June 30th of 2015. We do have some initiatives that are still ramping up. We don't have data yet, so you will see in the report it's just one data point, but over time we will be tracking progress year over year. And we are planning on doing evaluations for selected Measure A initiatives to ensure that the money is being spent and producing results in countywide. So how was Measure A money spent? Through June 30th, 2015, we spent $36,396,204 in Measure A in these categories. Most of it did go into health services, primarily for the Seton contract to provide our low-income patients health care in the North County. So looking at a different way, pie chart, we have primarily health, but really good distribution and allocation of funds to other results areas. And this year, for the 15-17 cycle, so we spent $37 million last year, but for the 15-17 cycle, we actually budgeted $244 million. So you will see a lot more in terms of results and spending around Measure A this coming year. So I wanted to go through some of the highlights of specific initiatives. In healthcare, we have the Seton contract in North County, the initiative around mental health for adults. 283 or 70% of mentally ill who were admitted in jail for misdemeanors were released within 6 days. Prop 47 has made an impact in this area with misdemeanors no longer being brought to jail in non-violent drug-related offenses. And Mental Health Respite Center is in progress. It is expected to be completed this year in San Mateo. And we've established medical services, additional medical services on the coast side through the Pescadero Clinic as well as mobile vans. For children and youth, the Big Lift is our most significant initiative. We have 4 school districts now that are up and running with 800 preschool slots in the following school districts in Cabrillo, La Honda, Pescadero, Jefferson, and South San Francisco. We also have the library summer learning camps, which we've expanded this year with additional Measure A funds. So this past year, 300 children participated and retained their literacy skills in 7 locations. This is our prevention, early intervention initiative in youth mental health. A couple of the initiatives there, the Parenting Project, which trained parents on better identifying issues with mental illness with their children and helping and supporting them during the school year. The Parenting Project had 339 parents graduating, with 87% reporting that they have fewer attendance problems for their children. And on the training on youth mental health first aid, and this is for parents, for faculty, and school administrators, 917 individuals are now certified. 92% reporting that they can recognize signs of mental illness, and 97% of those that have been trained in real-life incidents were actually able to apply the skills that they learned. Homelessness and housing, this will be a much larger initiative in this new budget cycle, but this past year we provided emergency housing assistance for 382 households. 66% of them have remained housed. On the motel voucher program, we helped 762 families, and 67% of them are now exiting to transitional housing, hopefully onto permanent housing as part of the additional funds for this year. On the hot teams, we engaged 156 individuals. There's still a ways to go on this initiative. Only 24 or 15.4% of those that had been engaged have transitioned to permanent housing. And for East Palo Alto, where we funded the shelter there year-round, we are providing 40 shelter beds now throughout the year. For parks, there were 78 projects that were scheduled. 34 of them have been completed through June of 2015 on time and on budget. We funded 7 parks positions for administration as well as the operations of specific parks and trails. The Parks Department has purchased a number of significant equipment that are there now to maintain the parks. A significant replacement of vehicles that were outdated and in repairs all the time. And then in Coyote Point, we have now 2 automated pay stations in the Coyote Point recreation area. And again, for parks, we allocated another $5 million this cycle, and so we should see significant progress in parks this year as well. On paratransit, this is our contract with Samtrans. We had 0 trip denials for Ready Wheel service. They had 90%. They met their 90% on-time performance goals, and we have increased ridership from last year by 5.4%. And for technology infrastructure, our ISD department to be commended for the Wi-Fi sites that have been completed. We have 11 that were done last year. We have another 15 to go this year, so for a total of 26 sites. And then on the network upgrade, we have upgraded 429 ports, essentially making our infrastructure faster, access to the internet, more bandwidth. And then on the open data platform, with the data sets that we have there, they were accessed over 3.7 million times, and we're planning to do a much better job tracking how many downloads we actually get to see if the data is actually used by programmers and members of the community. On capital improvements, the Public Safety 911, the Emergency Operations Building Data Center, if you have been here the last few weeks, the motor pool is now, PG&E is there. They're starting to move the motor pool out of our site here, and so that work has begun, and we do expect this project to be completed 2017. Pescadero Fire Station work continues on finding a site for the fire station. We also have the Cordilleras Mental Health Facility funded with Measure A, as well as library improvements in the cities of South San Francisco, Daly City, Half Moon Bay, East Palo Alto, and North Fair Oaks and Pacifica. What's ahead? So Michelle Duran and Marshall Wilson and I have been meeting with board members on our Measure A logo. We now have that, and we'll be working with departments and our community partners to get that out into the community, like the Parks Project, anything significant around the shelters, putting it in the food pantries where we funded $1 million worth of improvements and food. So you will see more of Measure A out in the community this coming year. We also have a website that's in development. We'll show that to the board when we're more ready with it, probably in the next couple of months. And the dashboard, which we've been keeping up to track all the performance results, will be redesigned so it's more in line with the significant areas that we've highlighted here, different categories. And the Oversight Committee will meet again on September 29th so that we can begin reviewing preliminary results of the fiscal year 2016 spending and receipts. And it's just here's the dashboard. If you want to take a look at it, I'll send out the link. So in closing, I want to thank all of the members of the Oversight Committee. Quite a few hours spent on reviewing the performance measures and the reports and the audits. So I want to thank them for their time and their service. I also want to thank our controller, Juan Ragoza, who's here, and his team for preparing the annual audit and the agreed upon procedures on the spending. For the County Counsel's office, County Counsel John Byers, specifically Paul Okada and Justin Mates on his team, Mary Claire Katz and our Budget Policy and Performance team. Mary Claire actually prepared a lot of the reports for the Oversight Committee, so I want to thank her for all her hard work, and also Alicia and Suki and Kim who helped clerk during the meetings. Special thank you to all of our departments that have really taken on all of these initiatives and made progress over the past year, and a lot more coming from them this cycle. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Raina, for that report. We have one speaker, Samuel Hudkins, I think it is. Samuel Hutchins?
No,
sorry.
Hudkins, you were right the first time.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
Samuel Hudkins, Vice Chair of the Measure A Oversight Committee. It was through the generosity of the voters of San Mateo County that we have this half-cent tax and income to support things that would not normally be funded. Raina's report gives an excellent overview, and I want to emphasize the one slide that is still up there. Thank you to the Board of Supervisors. I'm sure the people within the San Mateo County who are aware of what is being funded through Measure A are very thankful to you also. Thank you.
Thank you. So do we have a motion to, or other comments? I'm sorry.
Just a quick comment, but it's really an excellent report, and I just wanted to drill down a little bit. One of the things we didn't, for example, some of the things that I'm proudest of that we've done, we've had some SROs, or school resource officers, to our schools to make them safer, and under leadership of Supervisor Tessier, we have the collaboration with the schools. And that youth mental health first aid I think is incredibly important, training both teachers and parents to recognize some, when kids are really having difficulties, so they can actually make sure that the services are brought to those kids and families to make sure that we don't have tragedies that have happened in other communities. So I'm really proud of the things that we've done in mental health. But also just when we talk about housing, one of the things that we have done is we've actually focused on things like farm labor housing, and recently completed 2 projects that I'm particularly proud of, and we have 9 in the pipeline. And it'll go a lot faster in the future because of the fact that we've been able to work out process and procedures with both building and planning, the fire department, which was really important, and as well as the housing department. So those are things I'm really proud of. And the last thing I'd say is that the health clinic that we have at Pescadero and Puente, and I know we were all here when Molly, who was their health, I guess the manager of, I forgot exactly what her title is, but she actually basically works to do reporting and collaborating and coordinating and consolidating things of that sort. When she pointed out that 15% of all the people who go there have never in their life seen a doctor. That's just incredible. So it's, I think it's incredibly moving and really important that we, continue with those kind of efforts. So I'm really proud of what we have accomplished in a fairly short period of time.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Green.
I was just going to add that I think the work we've done in the parks and the libraries have just been outstanding, because those are city and county services that everybody uses, and so that enhancing the parks and getting more maintenance and getting more rangers, and some of the libraries where we've expanded the children's section especially, and we've put more computers in, is just really a big benefit to the community.
Thank you. Supervisor Tissier.
I'd just like to sort of play on that a little bit, in that the one thing about working with the libraries is that we've been able to keep kids engaged during the summer so they don't lose everything that they gain during the school year. And I think that's sort of also feeds to the big lift that keeps them reading at the proper age level. And so it's really, I think we're seeing a lot of great strides in that, and I think that's really important because they are the future. And so I really appreciate the fact that everybody's been recognized that the libraries are very important to us. So, thank you.
Supervisor Plant.
Thanks. So I echo my colleagues in acknowledging the tremendous amount of good work that's been done with the Measure A funds. As was mentioned by Rayner, we're going to see a lot more in housing in the current year, subsequent year, which is perfect timing. I had just two quick questions. Rayner, could you just refresh my memory on the spending in 14-15? It was about $37 million. So obviously our proceeds were quite a bit higher. Can you remind me? Was it just that we weren't able to spend those funds, or they weren't allocated? I'm just a little foggy on that.
Most of it was allocated to Supervisor Pine. A lot of work hadn't started yet, so the big lift is a good example.
Right.
Where we did set aside funds, and there's just ramping up, and now we're actually starting to spend the money this fiscal year, but not last year. So there are a number of projects like that.
And my second question went to the bullet point noting that 70% of mentally ill people admitted to jail on misdemeanor charges are released within 6 days. Do we have a Measure A program that is kind of helping with that goal? Again, just to refresh my memory.
There is. It is under the mental health system of care for adults. It's within that. It's one of the initiatives within that is putting more resources in the jail or in partnership with the jail so that they don't stay in the jail.
I mean, I think this sort of thing and the upcoming respite center are just making us a much more compassionate county when it comes to the mentally ill. And then the final comment is I'm really excited about the work that Michelle Durand is doing with the logos because I think the taxpayers will certainly appreciate being able to associate this work with their approval of the tax.
Thank you. At this time, I don't see Naomi Partridge. Is she? Oh, they're right over here. Maybe you would like to say a few words, Naomi?
Good morning, Supervisors and Renee. I am the newest member on this committee, and I just want to say that I want to thank Don for selecting me to serve from the coast side. I'm now retired from Half Moon Bay city politics, so it's kind of fun to be back involved in the county. So I really want to say what a great job this committee has done. It was a lot of reading and watching them go through that process. And so you've selected a bunch of wonderful people, and Renee is such a great leader. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you.
And thank you for serving. You bring a wealth of experience in county government and the whole coast side, so thanks for serving.
Thank you. So item number 3, motion, please.
Move to accept the Measure A Oversight Committee's annual report.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to item 4, which is a public hearing to consider a special parcel tax for extended police and structural fire services in County Service Area Number 1. And I believe Mr. Maltby is taking the lead.
Mr. President, members of the board, this is a special parcel tax that has been levied in the area of CSA 1, which includes principally the Highlands and some surrounding unincorporated communities. The tax was first imposed by a vote of the people in 1982, and it was intended to enhance police and fire services. The tax currently is at $65 per year per parcel, and the item before you today is to open the public hearing, listen to the testimony that you will receive, adopt the special parcel tax at the rate of $65 per parcel for a period of time for 4 years, and then secondly, to adopt a resolution that calls for an election in CSA 1 for the purpose of submitting this to the voters. The present parcel tax expires on June 30th of this year. We do note that there are substantial reserves in the CSA 1 fund. However, as you know, those reserves are used for capital purposes, and particularly as it relates to fire improvements to the fire station, purchase of fire apparatus. Those are very expensive items, so the reserves tend to go up and down a lot depending on the purchase of those items. So right now they're at a high point, but there will be expenditures offsetting those reserves coming in the future. With that, Mr. President, I recommend that you open the public hearing and then take action on the item before you.
Thank you, Mr. Baldy. Any comments at this point? No? Okay, so can we have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Yes. We don't. Aye. So the public hearing is now open. I don't have any speaker cards. Does anybody want to speak on item 4? No.
Move to close the public hearing.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Public hearing closed. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I have a comment before, if I may. Thank you. So, as a supervisor representing this district, the Highlands really like county fire and county law enforcement, and for that reason they tax themselves. This has been reviewed by the community, and as you see in the staff report, has been approved on multiple occasions. It actually raises very little money. I think it's the $95,000, but I think it's a reflection of the fact that the community really values those services, and kind of shows that each time they vote on it.
And they get excellent service from the Sheriff's Department.
They do indeed. So with that, I'll move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
As well as CDF.
And Mr. Byers, do we need to do specific action on D&E, or was that just taken care of?
I might suggest that given that this is an election, that you go ahead and make a specific motion to adopt the 2 resolutions as stated.
I'll make that motion to adopt the resolutions as outlined in the staff report.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Moving on to item 5, which is improving flood control in San Mateo County areas of responsibilities, and B, approving an authorization and the transfer of $200,000. And I believe Mr. Porter is going to lead this discussion.
Thank you, President Slocum, members of the board, Mr. Byers. We have a PowerPoint for this that will be set up here very quickly. Thank you. As you know, San Mateo County, when it rains, does have flooding problems. This El Nino has been somewhat of a letdown this year, but we have experienced some significant flooding over the years. I'd like to think that our great response to this winter was as a result of all the preparation that we did moving into this storm season. We have been very lucky at the way that El Nino has treated us. But on those occasions when we do receive several storms in a row, we do get flooding in this county. We have trailer parks that flood. Pescadero, almost on an annual basis, floods at Pescadero Creek Road. And then we have occasional areas within the county, mostly on the bay side, that flood as well. We do have a countywide flood control district, but it is countywide in name only. Our flood control district was created in 1959, and it was created along with other counties, and we all did a similar type thing back in those days. we basically created a countywide flood control district, but we limited revenue to the subzones where we were going to do work. So in the case of San Mateo County, we have really 3 main flood zones. Those are Colma Creek, which is in the North County, and that encompasses about 5 cities up there. San Bruno Creek, which really drains the majority of the city of San Bruno. And then San Francisquito Creek, which is on the south end of the county, excuse me, and is the border between San Mateo County and Santa Clara County. In the case of San Francisquito Creek, we're a member of a joint powers authority with the city of Palo Alto, Menlo Park, East Palo Alto, and the Santa Clara Valley Water District. So these agencies have gotten together and worked on a project to help relieve flooding in that area. The revenue that we receive in our subzones is a portion of the 1% of property tax that was in place at the time Prop 13 was put into play. And that number, that revenue has been held fairly steady based upon the increase in property taxes over the past roughly nearly 30 years. Unfortunately, it's not a lot of revenue. As you can see, Colma Creek is really the only district or the only subzone that we have that's generating any sort of revenue. We get about $2.5 to $3 million a year. That money is typically leveraged for debt service on bonds. That's how we completed most of the improvements along that channel. San Bruno Creek only generates about $200,000 to $250,000 per year. In that area, we've got 2 major pump stations, and that channel is essentially an earthen channel. So with that type of revenue, it really limits us to maintenance only, as well as clearing of vegetation in that channel. That channel is designed for what's called a 25-year storm event, or a 4% probability of a flood occurring or overtopping that channel in any given year. Colma Creek is designed to a 50-year storm, which equates to a 2% probability that it'll overtop in any year. And San Francisquito Creek is really not designed, although there is a project coming up to provide for 100-year protection or protection from a 1% storm. Plus, they've incorporated sea level rise into that project. And Supervisor Pine is a board member on that JPA and probably knows more about that than anybody in this room, with the exception of maybe Ann Stillman. She knows a lot about a lot of things. So anyway, that is basically the extent of our flood control district. We've done some looking at other districts within the Bay Area, and it's been revealed that we are basically the lowest funded and lowest staffed agency in the Bay Area. This slide gives you an understanding of what the watershed areas are for these subzones. The blue is Colma Creek, the kind of red-pink is San Bruno, and the green and the yellow is San Francisquito Creek. Although that covers a lot of geography, the main channels are really located right by the bay. But there are a lot of other areas in this county where we don't work, where the flood control district does not work because we don't have funding sources. And those are the Bayfront Canal, and that's really in southeast Redwood City. That runs east of Highway 101. And that is an issue for us because that channel is undersized. We actually operate the North Fair Oaks area. We have a large unincorporated pocket. And unfortunately, we do have flooding in that area, mostly surficial, but we can't send more water towards the Bayfront Canal because that would only exacerbate the flooding issues down there. Belmont Creek is another one where we have had perennial problems with flooding. The county has a small portion along Old County Road of Belmont Creek, but when Belmont Creek starts to run, you'll see the underpass on Harbor tend to fill up with water. That creek overtops, it shuts down that underpass. So that's a problem for us. We also have the Harbor Industrial area there that can be impacted by that. In the city of San Mateo, we operate Coyote Point Recreational Area. That area is subject to tidal influences. So as time goes on and sea level rise becomes more and more apparent, we need to think about how we're going to protect Coyote Point. Another area that we don't work is what's called the navigable slough, and that's kind of a finger that comes in from the bay between San Bruno Channel and Colma Creek. For whatever reason, when Colma Creek was derived, the navigable slough was left out. But in the latest releases of the FEMA flood insurance maps, the draft maps, The city of San Bruno and South San Francisco are both subject to flooding now and are in the FEMA maps because navigable slough will overtop in a tidal situation. We also have issues up in the Broadmoor area. The city of Daly City has a major project to upsize what's called the Vista Grande Canal, as well as a tunnel that runs underneath Fort Funston and dumps water into into the Pacific Ocean. The reason why that's an issue for us is we operate Broadmoor, and the collection system that runs from Broadmoor down to the Vista Grande Canal is somewhat undersized, and we cannot send more water towards that canal until those downstream restrictions are eased. But at the Vista Grande, or in Broadmoor, we have a perennial problem with flooding on 88th and 89th Street. There's kind of a bowl there, and when it rains, that fills up literally up to 6 feet high and floods some apartment structures in that area. On the coast side, I mentioned the Buno-Pescadero Creek watershed. That experiences flooding on an annual basis. And on another note, other areas are putting in creek monitors, flow monitors in their creek to try to come up with an early warning system so that when we do see big storms, we can monitor those creeks and we can essentially alert the public when we think flooding is going to occur so that they can plan accordingly. I know this is tough to see, but if you can look, there's little yellow lines that show these channels that we'll be working in. That is a little easier to see in your report, which is attached to the board report. This is just an example of what can happen at Belmont Creek. This is Belmont Creek at 101. This photo was taken on January 19th of this year. Had that creek risen another 3 feet, that would have shut down 101. So these are actually quite big issues in that if they're not addressed, the flooding can affect major transportation systems in this county. So here's why we're here. As I'm sure you've seen in the report, what we're suggesting is that we perform a pilot program over the next 3 years and look at working in areas within this county that our current flood control subzones do not cover. So what we're suggesting is that for this fiscal year, the board authorized $200,000 for us to begin work on this. And basically what those dollars are going to be used for is to retain 2 positions and allow the remainder to be used for consulting services. Those 2 positions are at what we'll call a program manager level. That's really a working title. This can be a registered engineer or not, and in fact we're suggesting that it's not a licensed engineer. The second position is a technical support position. That can be a registered engineer to do the technical work that will be necessary to work with consultants and to work on flood control projects. So we're suggesting that we fund those 2 positions and begin that hiring process subject to your board's approval. Once we get those on board, we're going to start working with our partner agencies that are also involved in these watersheds and only work in areas where we have willing partners. Belmont Creek is kind of the poster child of projects right now. I've been working with the public works directors in Belmont and San Carlos to resolve that issue. There's been a conceptual plan developed where we're going to put 2 large box culverts in Harbor Boulevard, Harbor Boulevard, to relieve some of the flooding in that area, and also go up to Twin Pines Park and do some mitigation work there, but also help to use that area as a retention basin so that when the floods come in, we can retain some of that water up at Twin Pines Park and then release it slowly out to minimize the peak, and that helps to relieve flooding. The other thing that we're going to do in this area, not in Belmont Creek, but within the county, is more aggressively pursue grant funds. To date, we've simply not had the staff time to do that. There's a lot of money out there that's available to counties and cities for grants. So part of the responsibility for these 2 positions is to seek those dollars. We also want to have a larger presence both at the federal and state level, as well as the regional level. Right now, the way we're funded, my staff really can only work on work within those subzones. So we're not really getting involved in federal and state level issues. These 2 positions will be charged with doing that. San Mateo County needs a voice at the federal level and the state level, and this is what we intend to do with these folks. And finally, CCAG has put together a water committee. It's a subcommittee of CCAG. And part of the role of these 2 people will be to attend those meetings
and provide whatever support we can to CCAG while they work on water issues within the county. They're really looking at the full palette of water issues. That is groundwater, surface water flooding, as well as the clean water program. So they're taking a holistic view at how water is provided and managed in this county. I wanted to show you some pretty cool stuff that the Santa Clara Valley Water District is working on that we're really not participating in to a full extent, but we could if this proposal is approved. This map shows San Francisco Creek. To the upper left, you will see the Dumbarton Bridge. That pink line around the shoreline is a proposal to put in a levee-type system to protect that area from tidal flooding. What's interesting about this map is the blue colors that you see are flooding that occurs in a 100-year event due to riverine flooding. The green and red areas are areas that are influenced by tidal flooding and a combination of riverine and tidal flooding. So in order to get those properties out of a FEMA floodplain, you really need to build this levee. We've not been working with San Francisco Creek on that, but that would be an area where we could provide support. This is also an image that San Francisco Creek JPA has pursued. They've set up stream gauges in their watershed, and they're able to monitor the creek flows, and they know based on past experience and hydrographic data at what point flows from these different gauges will trigger flooding downstream. So they've got a website, and these green dots show the areas of some of the monitors that they have, but when it's a green dot, everything's okay. In the event that you're going to have a flood situation, this website will change colors, where obviously yellow is a warning area of flooding and red it's going to flood. They also have this link to text messages. So if you register on their website, they will send you an alert when flooding is potentially coming in that area. So finally, what happens? We're really looking at a 3-year proposal. What happens at the end of 3 years? Well, what we're going to do is take a look at progress made over those 3 years. And by the way, should your board approve this, we'll be updating your board regularly on progress today. So we're going to look at the end of 3 years and see what we've done and decide whether it makes sense to continue this. We'll also look at funding sources that are available. Right now we're asking for general fund dollars, unrestricted funds. During those 3 years, we're going to be looking at other ways to fund this effort. There's also, at the state level, some traction on legislation that will change the definition of stormwater in Prop 218, and that is one of the restrictive propositions that is put in place when we raise garbage, sewer, and water rates. They're going to try, or there is an attempt to have stormwater infrastructure being classified and funded under a similar set of rules. So we'll come back, we'll determine whether support exists, and then we'll look at possibly spinning this thing off. So this does not necessarily have to be a county function. If we can form a JPA or have partnerships with cities, we could create another agency. I don't want to say similar to the Santa Clara Valley Water District, but an agency akin to that, where it's a separate agency from the cities and counties that really has responsibility for flood control and resource protection within the county. That concludes my presentation. I'd like to mention we have Peter Wisman from Arcadis with us. Peter was the project manager on this, and this report was developed through the help of Supervisor Pine and Arcadis. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Mr. Pine?
Thank you. Thanks for the report, Jim. I just thought I'd add some comments as I've been working on this for quite some time now, and very pleased to bring this forward. You know, I think, as the board knows, I became interested in sea level rise some time ago, and that really kind of, the more I studied that topic, the more I came to appreciate that flooding issues exist today, and that, you know, well, sea level rise is going to compound and compound the situation. We have very real flood risk currently, and we kind of dodged the bullet this year. You know, we see when king tides occur that there are certain portions of the county that are inundated. For example, Oyster Point. You know, the new FEMA maps have recently come out, and they're going to put a lot of neighborhoods in those hazard zones and require insurance. So the issue of flooding and sea level rise and storm events is really much more on people's radar. So when you look at it over the long term, I think there's a long way to go. It's important for the cities and the counties to collaborate in this effort of dealing with flooding and sea level rise. And we don't have a great mechanism for currently doing that. I've also worked a great deal with Congressman Spear's office on this question. And in time, we would like to see something that is more comprehensive. But what really we're proposing today is really a start, because there are substantial areas where the county has really direct responsibility, obviously in the flood zones, and then we have these pockets which are subject to flooding, where we want to be in a position to more effectively work with our partners. So with this funding, what we'll be able to do is have dedicated people who can develop the expertise and have the focus to do these sort of collaborations. And the grant funding, as is pointed out, is something that historically we have not been particularly nimble at seeking out, but there are lots of those opportunities that we will be much better at pursuing in the future. So I think you all received the report electronically. If anyone doesn't have a hard copy, we have one here. If you hadn't had it printed out, anyone else need a hard copy? Okay. It's a little easier to read when it's in that format. So again, I think this is a really important step in the right direction to deal with an issue that's only going to become more demanding as time goes on.
Thank you. Supervisor Tissier.
Just a comment. I really do appreciate the work that you've done on this. When we talked about the North County, one of the areas that we talked about was the Broadmoor area and around City Hall as well. And, it is going to be important to work with our state and federal agencies, because even in that project, the Corps of Engineers involved, because the waters go to the waters of the U.S. So it becomes very complex. Mm-hmm. And also the cost to make those improvements, I think, were something about $10 million. Maybe it was even more than that. But those are the kind of things where we're going to need help with the cities in the unincorporated areas to go after some of those grant funds and things in order to get them. And even, Jim, I know last time we talked, you were talking about something similar to what you were talking about in Belmont, where you have those retention areas where you might be able to solve some of the problem earlier. It's not a total fix, but it might help from having that flooding every single year. And I'm hoping that as we talk about trying to go out and look at more of these things, that some of those could maybe happen sooner than later, because the people that own those apartments around that are flooded every single year. It doesn't take much to back up there, and it floods the entire garages, knocks out the water heaters, and every year it's like an instant replay, and it's very difficult because it's so costly to fix it, and it requires so many different people. But these homeowners, or at least the people that own these apartments, really get hurt every single year. So I'd appreciate if we keep moving on that direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Groom.
Yeah, when I was on the San Mateo City Council, we had terrible issues with FEMA and flooding, and we spent millions of dollars building new levees, which FEMA then expanded the flood zone, and we had to build additional. And we actually started, my colleague at that time, Brent Grotti, walked neighborhoods to start a tax-based district to help with the public, to help pay these bills. And there became a maintenance district that put a little bit of money in, and which helped, but it grows greater and greater. And with sea level rise, some of those levees now need to be expanded again.
Thank you. Supervisor Horsley.
Just a few comments. That the report really it does talk a little bit about coast site pescadero. You did talk about it. Does talk about the feasibility analysis, and we have done a lot of work. And I've worked with a company called CBEC and RCD, or Resource Conservation District, and so we've got an analysis and potential engineering solution that is the RFP is about to go out on the potential of a causeway out there. One of the things I noticed, I do know, I really appreciate what's been done on the bay side. We've done a lot of work on the coast side, and there is like a source of funding from, it's actually Prop 84, and it was called EARWIMP, and I think it stands for the Integrated Regional Water Management Plan or Program. And so I've been able to get some grants for some of our coastside water districts. But we've done it not necessarily with engineers. We've done it with people, for example, like your former Carol Foster was a resource management specialist, essentially like a biologist. And so I would wonder about the selection of people that, one of the things that I would prefer seeing is somebody who either is a biologist or like resource conservation specialist. Engineers are great, but there's a lot of environmental issues on all these things, and so that, at least it's been my experience that when we've been able to get things done, we've usually worked with people who like are RCD or resource conservation specialists, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you add that. In page 15 in your report, you talk about stream gauges. I'd like you to consider increasing that to our coast-side creeks as well, not only because of the potential for flood, and by the way, it doesn't flood once in a while, it floods every single raining. It floods every time, not once in a while, every time. Even for the lightest rain, it floods in Pescadero, and it is a public safety issue. But I'm also interested in stream gauges on the coast side because of the fact we have so many problems with water, with all of our little water districts. And so, I'd like you to expand that so we have a better feel for what's going on in those areas. Like San Gregorio, for example, the watershed areas essentially. And then one of the things we haven't talked about on the coast side is that we are ground zero for sea level rise and for king tides. So we've, as you know, we work with your department as well as Caltrans and the city of Half Moon Bay. They were really great to work with as well. So we've been able to fix Surfers Beach. If we hadn't done that this year, we might have ended up having the road cut in half, essentially, and cutting off the north coast. But we also at the same time have Murata Beach, and I want to say, Murata Road at Media, which your staff has done a fabulous job, but it's going to take more of an engineering fix there as well. So, and then last, it's not our responsibility with Pacifica, that's really theirs, but you have the whole north end of Pacifica that's just being eroded away at about 3 feet a year, which is threatens essentially about 5,000 people, and they are, even though it is the city, it's essentially ours. So I would like to see some expansion of this, or at least some consideration for working with those coastside cities like Pacifica, like Half Moon Bay. Half Moon Bay, we have a great relationship with both cities. Both work really effectively with us, but they certainly don't have the kind of resources that we have in the county. And I'm not indicating that we have to cover everything, but I think we need to consider not just the Bayside, because I know the Bayside has lots of economic importance to the entire region, maybe even to the entire nation, but on the coast side may not have the economic value, but it has the recreational value that I think that the whole, at least sometimes you go on a weekend, it feels like all 7 million people from the Bay Area are there. So it's a recreational resource, and that has value too. You may not be able to put a monetary value in, but it's got a value there as well. So I'm very supportive of this. I think it's a great idea. Supervisor Pine and I are on this water committee with CCAG. I just want you to take a look at essentially the kinds of staff that we have going forward. And I'm not trying to second guess what the department does, but just recognizing that a lot of these issues require working with a whole variety of resource agencies, and it really requires somebody who essentially understands them, speaks their language. And I will conclude by saying also that we also need some specialization in terms of writing grants. That, I know our staff doesn't have that. We do have a grant writer on contract, but I think we really have to focus on, you can't just dump that on staff. You really need to have people who are experts at writing grants.
Thank you, Supervisor Horsley. Supervisor Tissier.
Just a quick question, Jim. When you have the funding history, for instance, with the Daly City Vista Grand Canal, it says $5 million to date spent on EIR, EIS. Did we participate in that at all?
Through the president, no, we did not. That was funded entirely by the city of Daly City.
Okay.
And that project is simply for the tunnel and the Vista Grande Canal channel opening, as well as an overflow into Lake Merced. So that is roughly a $100 million project.
I was just going to say, I said 10 million. I missed a 0 or 2 on
Yeah,
that one.
it's a big
I don't know
job.
why you didn't do it right away. It was so inexpensive. Yeah, I did miss a few zeros, but thank you for that. Okay.
Can I ask, the Vista Grande Canal, having grown up in Daly City, I thought it has some connection to Lake Merced as well. It doesn't?
No.
Oh, okay.
Through the president. So the plan is to essentially put an overflow at the mouth of the Vista Grande Canal, right kind of by where the sewer treatment plant is, by the Jolger Senior Center. Divert water into Lake Merced, which is an emergency water supply for San Francisco, which has actually reduced its water level over time with the drought. Bring that water back, restore that water source, and then take what's left and run that out to the ocean. So there's kind of a dual purpose here. Lake Merced also contributes to the groundwater basin there. So the more water you get in there, the more water you get in the ground. And then San Francisco actually pumps that and serves that up to their residents.
Anything else?
I was just going to add a couple of points. I just want to follow on to comments made by Supervisor Horsley. First, Supervisor Horsley and his office have done a really good job at getting funding from the IRWP process and Prop 84. So that's exactly what we want to do on other projects. So, and I think we will be able to do that when we have more capability. On the grant writing, I'm pleased to see that we have retained this DUDAC firm to help. Most recently, we became aware of a FEMA hazard mitigation grant opportunity, and we scrambled to try to identify a project, found a 100-page report on needs in the Colma Creek and handed it over to DUDAC, and they did it. And that was a really big value add. Couple other things. The report, kind of has this really kind of kludgy title. It says, Improving Flood Control in San Mateo County's Areas of Responsibility. Because the report is, as you know, is very much focused on the flood control districts and unincorporated areas. Because we simply we're not proposing to try to take on all flood issues everywhere. I think someday the county needs to get there. But this is really focused on areas where we have a direct interest. So, certainly on coastal erosion, which is a major issue on the coast, we can contribute there, and our work in the sea level rise effort is already involved in that as well. But it's important to point out that we've identified far more work than we can possibly do. So this amount of money will move us only so far. So one of the most important things will be for the new staff to come up with a work plan and try to prioritize amongst all these things, because this is really just almost seed money. I just want everyone to appreciate that we're really going to get so far with this, and we're going to have to focus.
Yes.
Thank you. Well, let me just ask a question and make a comment. I support the proposal and compliment Arcadis for the report. I thought it was well done. Thank you. On page 36, Appendix 1, it talks about, there's a chart there, talks about the Bayfront Canal, unincorporated North Fair Oaks area. And basically, the way I understand this, and maybe you could help me understand it better, but it says the potential project work plan should funding be available. And I'm a little confused in that Redwood City, I thought, had studied this issue, and Stanford had studied this issue. And the point we were at a while back with Supervisor Pine and I meeting with the folks from Redwood City was, I think they had asked us for a couple of $1 million to do the work on the Bayfront Canal. And so I'm a little confused on the Redwood City, San Mateo County relationship and where exactly we are and where we're headed, because this seems to say on page 36 that we're going to do some additional studies, if I'm reading it right.
Yep.
I'm wondering if you could just clarify and comment.
Certainly. So from Public Works perspective, from our department's perspective, we've not been deeply involved in that because of the way that we're funded. You're aware that we have a series of restricted funds. We've tried to sit in on those meetings, but we really haven't been a driving force in those meetings. There's been a lot of studies done. Stanford has worked on studies. Redwood City has worked on studies. The South Bay Salt Pond Restoration Authority has worked on studies. But right now, we're not seeing a lot of movement. There's a lot of studies. Somebody needs to come in and start to take a leading role and start moving the dial a little bit. And what we would like to do through this effort is to become more of a participant in this effort. And if the cities would like us to, we can lead an effort to actually move that dial. Right now, we're not truly participating because the Department of Public Works doesn't really have an area there that we can participate with in terms of charging our staff time. So this would allow us to be available and to move this. That was really our intent.
And Mr. Porter, I mean, the last I recall, there was still a $3 or $4 million shortfall in the Redwood City plan, and I haven't heard any updates or any news that that's been a funding source has been found for that.
Through the President, I agree. I have not heard that there has been any additional funding found to be able to address those issues there.
But I think Supervisor Slocum is a good example of why having these two dedicated staff people will be so important, as you understand.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I support the proposal. I would just like us to be, more involved with Redwood City and getting to this solution. And I don't know if there's a shortfall right now or not, but I know we haven't talked to them in quite some time, and this is a really important issue for those folks that live in those trailer courts along the 101. But also, as we discussed before, it really doesn't do so much for the actual area of North Fair Oaks further south. And I guess the bottom line is I would just like us to re-engage with Redwood City and find out where we are and what the solution is, because the charts seem to indicate it's going to be another 24 months of study and time going by, and we're not, nobody's addressing the issue really that I could see. So maybe we could just get with Redwood City and
certainly, and we will. And I think, as Supervisor Pine pointed out, we will approach the cities, and if there's willing partners, we'll be more than happy to step in and help. What we don't want to do is to usurp their jurisdictional authority. This is really a Redwood City. Redwood City has been taking the lead on this. We'd be happy to come in and help, but I think we have to be very careful in how we approach that. But part of what we want to do, though, is to make sure that we do get some movement. So that's part of the charge of these two people. And as Supervisor Pine mentioned, their first order of work is to come up with a work plan. Get in here, show us what you're going to do. And we have an idea of what that is, but right now we need somebody that's going to eat, drink, and sleep flood control to think about these things.
Thank you. Somebody needs to wake
Mr.
up.
President.
Somebody needs to wake up every morning and be concerned about the flooding issues. Yeah,
And go to sleep with that same concern.
And go to sleep with that same idea. Yes.
I'd like to underscore a couple of the points to be made, but first to thank Supervisor Pine for focusing attention on this area and the policy direction, and Mr. Porter and his staff for really a fine work that they've done to bring it to this point. We have to begin somewhere, and this is the place to begin. But as has been said, I think by all of you, these are interrelated problems. They're not isolated, and they're not respecters of any jurisdictions. And they're only going to get worse in the future. They're not going to get better. And so we need to really, and the focus, I suspect, at this point is the work that Supervisor Horsley and Pine are doing with the CCAG committee. We really need to start looking at this as a countywide problem and issue and direct our attention from a policy standpoint to creating some sort of viable vehicle that will do this in the future. The second point I want to make is, and Supervisor Tissier made it very well for me, this is not a cheap date. $100 million in Daly City, probably twice that much in the South County. I mean, it goes on and on. These are expensive, long-term projects, and that, again, says to me we need a countywide effort that's focused on this so that we could get everyone to help develop the priorities, to help develop the fundraising mechanism that will really address these in the long run. So, I think this is a good beginning, but I think we have to keep pushing for that ultimate goal. And again, I thank Supervisor Pine for bringing us to this point.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? There being none, how about a motion for accepting the report entitled Improving Flood Control in San Mateo County's Areas of Responsibility, and B, approving an authorization transfer request in the amount of $200,000 from non-departmental ERAF reserves to various expenditure accounts in the Department of Public Works?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Porter.
Thank you.
I guess you're going to just stay there, aren't you? Yes. Item number 6 is a matter to consider rate increases in County Service Area number 8.
Thank you, President Slocum. I'm here before you today to outline staff's recommendation for a rate adjustment in CSA 8, County Service Area 8. Explain our reasoning. When I conclude my report, you'll be conducting a public hearing. I'll report to you how many protests we've received. This is a Prop 218 governed rate adjustment, and then the board can decide whether they want to approve the rate adjustment. So a bit of background, the county and CSA 8 is a member of the South Bayside Waste Management Authority, or SBWMA. Supervisor Slocum is a board member on that agency. The agency is composed of 10 cities, the county, and the West Bay Sanitary District. It ranges basically from the city of Burlingame south to the border with Santa Clara County. The area number 7, which is circled, is the CSA 8 area, and that's what we'll be talking about right now. So, wow, I covered that pretty well. The way that the garbage franchise works is there's 2 providers. One is Recology, and they're responsible for actually doing the collection. They go out with the trucks and the bins, and they pick up the bins, and they deliver it down to the Shoreline transfer station. And there's also a MRF there, a material recovery facility. That facility is operated by South Bay Recycling, which is a totally separate agency. That agreement for those franchises was put into place on January 1st of 2011, and it's a 10-year agreement. The franchise agreements expired December 31st of 2020, and that's an important fact to remember, and I'll talk about it in a little bit. The way that rate setting works is Recology and SBR both come up with their costs, so they find out how much it costs for them to provide the service. In the case of Recology, there's a lot of variables that goes along with that. The production rates in terms of how many bins and carts they can lift in any given day, the cost of fuel, the cost of wear and tear on the trucks, the depreciation of the trucks. There's also various industry indices that are factored in terms of fuel prices and some other operating indices, as well as their labor costs. With SBR, their costs are really associated with operating and processing and disposing of the material that they get. So they actually take the solid waste and they deliver it up to Ox Mountain. They take the recyclables and they process those and separate them into paper, cardboard, bottles and cans, and send that out into the commodity market to sell that. And then the remaining, the green waste goes to different composting facilities in the area. So there's 2 things that go on in this rate adjustment analysis. One is the SBWMA takes a look at the compensation reports that Recology and SBR put together, and they divide the costs among the different agencies. In this year's report, they recommended a 0.6% rate decrease for CSA 8. We then conduct our own analysis, and what we're recommending that your board approve is a 2.7% rate increase for carts and a 2% rate increases for bins. And that equates essentially to an increase in 74 cents per month for the 32-gallon cart service. And in CSA 8, the minimum service is 64 gallons. So $28 gets you 64 gallons worth of service, which is very large, but that's required by ordinance. So what is our reasoning for the rate adjustment? I mentioned that this contract expires in 2020. And what the agencies try to do is make sure that when we get to 2020, that we don't owe Recology or SBR any money. So another part of our methodology is that we try to make sure that there's not a big rate shock to our ratepayers. So rather than drop rates and raise them and have a real fluctuation, we try to make the rates steady. But in making our recommendation, we looked into the future, and there was really a few things that caught our eyes. We really see lower recycling revenue coming in the upcoming year. I think you know that the Chinese economy is slowing down. Much of the paper products goes to China. When there's less demand for those products, the cost that the folks are willing to pay for it goes down. That is part of the compensation, or that is one of the factors within the different providers' compensation requirements. So that could potentially cause us a problem. We do anticipate fuel prices to go up at some point, and fuel is a huge factor in Recology's costs. So we want to make sure that when those prices do go up, and they will go up, that it's not a huge shock to the ratepayers. And the final thing that we're looking at is that there was a court case in Southern California that looked at the equity of how you charge for service. And so we want to make sure that the cost of providing the service for each one of our types of units, either carts or bins, really reflects what it costs to provide that service. So there's been a bit of an imbalance in that area, and what we're doing is incrementally correcting that through these rate adjustments as we move forward. This chart gives you an idea of where we are with the rate adjustment in terms of other areas. You see the city of San Mateo has the lowest rates, and that's somewhat intuitive in that San Mateo has smaller parcels, they're very close together, Recology can get very good productivity in those areas. CSA 8 is a similar area where you've got a condensed urban area where the production works pretty well. Oops, I'm sorry. This gives you an example of the work that Recology does. And I know this is hard to read, but really what I wanted to show you was there's a lot of factors that go into the calculation of these rates. This tells you what those are, and this shows what Recology's work did to end up with their 6% rate decrease. So this tells you a little bit about what we're doing. The current rate is $27.31. We're suggesting that it go up to $28.05. So that's a 74-cent increase. And again, the carts will go up by 2.7% and the bins will go up by 2%. And that concludes my presentation. I did want to report out, this is a Prop 218 protest hearing. In CSA 8, we have 3,540 accounts. We've received 2 protests, so we have not gotten a protest vote in this case. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Could you give me that number again for the number of accounts? 3,000?
3,540.
Thank you. Questions? Just had one question that I'd like to ask you. Recology and South Bay Recycling most likely submit a great deal of data to your office, and I'm sure that Lillian Clark and Joe and the rest of the team spend days and days going through that data to make sure that it's all correct. So far?
We actually take it a little bit further. We hire a firm called Hilton Farnkoff. They used to be Hilton Farnkoff Hobson. Yeah. They're a firm out of Sacramento that specializes in analysis of solid waste rate reviews. Okay. So we hire a separate consultant to dig even deeper into these numbers for our jurisdictions, and then with the good work that Joe and Lillian do, combined with the work that Hilton Farnkoff does, we feel very confident with our recommendations.
Thank you very much. Supervisor Groom.
Mr. Porter, there was a lengthy article in the newspaper last week or a couple days ago that talked about, since the cost of fuel is now so low that it is much easier for many companies to just go out and use brand new materials to build new things than instead of using the recycled material, and that could portend something for recycling that could be harmful. Are you following that? Are you aware of that?
I am, and that is a reason for this rate adjustment. And it really revolves around plastics. Yeah. So all the plastics that are being collected, in theory, get processed and turned into new materials. Right now, oil is so cheap, it's cheaper to produce new plastic than it is to recycle it. So as you can imagine, the market for old plastic water bottles has dropped tremendously. So we're not seeing that revenue, and part of that revenue helps offset rates. So that's kind of why, well, it's not kind of, it's one of the reasons why we're suggesting that we raise the rates, because we anticipate that commodity revenue is going to really drop off. Yep.
Thank you.
And could that have, I mean, could that be a long-term kind of thing? I mean, we don't really know where when oil goes up or when oil goes down, but we have such a glut of oil right now. I mean, could this be for years?
Potentially. I think a lot depends on what happens with oil. And I think, you know, we saw during the recession in 2008, 2009, commodity prices just dropped because there was a lack of a need for these materials to produce essentially new boxes, new bottles, stuff. We're seeing a similar problem now with the drop in fuel. Even though the economy is stronger, the commodity or the cost of that fuel is cheaper to build new than.
But it makes me very worried about people seeing this message and then stopping to recycle. And then we'll get back to where we'll have all the plastic bottles in the rivers and the lakes and the ocean again.
Yeah.
Through the President, I've seen a number of articles recently on this particular topic in worldwide energy usage, which leads me to believe this is not a short-term problem. I mean, most energy analysts today, there's a real consensus that worldwide energy demand will peak in 2030. Will peak worldwide. So then think about the implications on the price of energy going forward.
But I think we have to, I know our recycling team is probably on top of this, but I think we have to really start kind of another marketing campaign to remind people how important it is to recycle.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Porter. A motion to open a public hearing? Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, the public hearing is now open, and I have no speaker cards. Do you have any over there, Mr. Clerk?
I do not know.
There are no speaker cards.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes. Public hearing closed.
I'll move to adopt the resolution setting the 2016 garbage and recyclables collection rates for County Service Area Number 8 in North Fair Oaks.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Porter.
Thank you.
Moving on now to item number 7, public hearing to consider the 2016 garbage and recyclable collection rates in the unincorporated franchise areas within the South Bayside Waste Management Authority.
Thank you, President Slocum. I'm going to go through this presentation much quicker because the principles are the same, but the details vary a little bit. So this area, this is our famous map that we love to see. All those other numbers are little unincorporated county pockets that are part of what we call the unincorporated franchise area. So it goes all the way up to Burlingame Hills, that's number 1. And there's different areas, West Menlo is number 8. And various areas in between. So we manage the garbage franchises for those areas. You know all about the background. You know all about how they collect their money and how it all works. Here's where we want to talk about details. So for the county franchise area, when Recology and SBR submitted their rate adjustments, the SBWMA actually recommended a 4.1% rate decrease. We thought that was a little bit suspect, so we went and we hired Hilton Farnkoff. We did our big analysis, and we do believe that the revenue requirement is not necessarily needing a 4.1 rate reduction, but we do feel that that number is closer to 1.6%. And part of that reason is, and that's a rate reduction, part of the reason is a lot of the variable factors that go into this are projections. And rather than try to embrace those projections, so to speak, we wanted to use real actual data. So during our calculation, we came up with a rate adjustment that would have been more akin to a 1.6% decrease. However, we're recommending a rate adjustment upwards for only the 20-gallon services and the 32-gallon cans. And what we're recommending in this area is a 2.7% rate adjustment only for the 20-gallon and the 32-gallon cans. The other ones, the 64s, the 96s, and all the commercial accounts will remain the same. And the reason is I mentioned that offset in the cost of providing service versus what we're collecting from the ratepayers. Right now, the residential rates, right now the residential rates are being offset to some extent by the commercial rates. So they're subsidizing the residential rates. We need to correct that. So we're going to hold the commercial rates flat and bring up the two accounts that are the ones that are subsidized the most, which is the 20 and 32 gallon cans. This chart gives you an idea of what our rates are compared to other agencies. In the case of the CFA, we're on the high side, and part of the reason is the areas that we service. So, if you remember what Burlingame Hills is like, they're windy roads with properties that are pretty far apart. Recology's production rates are less there, so it costs them more to provide that service, and we need to reflect that in our rates. I've actually kind of covered this. So we are recommending an increase for the 20-gallon can of 79 cents per month, and we're recommending an increase in the 32-gallon, it's a cart actually, of 94 cents a month. This is, again, that famous chart. With some exceptions, we've removed a couple of the line items that were projections that we felt should be left off. So this chart, I think this will give you an idea what that imbalance looks like. So we'll be asking your board to approve a 20-gallon rate of $30.21 a month. It's actually costing $41 to provide that service. So that extra $10 a month is being subsidized by the commercial accounts. What we're going to try to do is to bring those residential rates up to a point where they're self-supporting the cost of providing the service. And that's really why we're recommending this rate adjustment. That concludes my presentation. In this case, again, we have 5,445 accounts, and we have also received 2 protests. So we don't see a majority protest in this area. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Questions? No questions? Okay, a motion to open the public hearing on this matter?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I have no speaker cards on this item either.
I don't either.
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And I'll move to adopt the resolution setting the 2016 garbage and recyclable collection rates for the unincorporated franchise area within the South Bayside Waste Management Authority service area exclusive of County Service Area Number 8 and West Bay Sanitary District.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Porter. Now, let's see. Item number 8 on the agenda is presentation of service awards, which happens in room 101 in the building next door. We'll do that at 1:30. And we'll move on to item number 9, which is a Measure A, resolution authorizing the county managers to submit, to submit an application for grant funding from the San Mateo County Transit Authority local shuttle program for the Coastside Beach Shuttle Program, and the provision of $35,000 in local matching funds for said grant. Mr. Horsley?
Let me make a few comments on that. As we all know, in fact, we mentioned about the traffic that goes over to Coastside. One of what we're going to try to do is, now we can't take all the traffic off the Coastside, no doubt, but I hear lots of complaints from local residents that they can't get anywhere because of traffic. And so what we're going to try to do is have a pretty robust shuttle program that goes to all of the major sites on the coastside, from the town of Half Moon Bay to areas like Fitzgerald Marine Reserve, all the way up to the Devil's Slide Park. And we want to do this for a 2-year period of time and see if we could encourage more people to get out of their cars to use the shuttle. We do, of course, have the Naomi Patridge Trail, which we're working on too, to try and connect that always up to El Granada. Again, doing everything we can from our perspective to be able to try and get people off the road into sharing a shuttle, or hopefully we're able to get those parallel trails built in the future, and so that people can walk and bicycle as well. In that case, this will also engage in a pretty active program of outreach to citizens as well as the visitors to the coast to try and we'll do extensive marketing, essentially, to try and get as many people to use that shuttle as possible. And again, we're not just going to go from Half Moon Bay up to Devil's Slide, but we also go to places like Fitzgerald Marine Reserve, and there are a number of beaches also along coastside that are pretty popular with the public. So we're pretty hopeful that we'll be able to provide pretty valuable service. Takes a little, just get an idea if we can take some of that traffic off of the roadway.
Thank you, Mr. Horsley. So any comment, question for Supervisor Horsley? Then perhaps we could.
So I'll make the motion to authorize the county manager to submit an application for grant funding from the San Mateo County Transportation Authority local shuttle program for the Coastside Beach Shuttle Program.
Second.
And the provision up to $35,000 and local matching funds for the grant.
I'll second that too.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I have a quick question maybe for, when will the TA make these decisions? I guess we have two that we talked about today. One was the shuttle to the parks from EPA, and then the one you just...
It will be in an April meeting.
Let us know.
I will. I think they'll both be. I hope they'll both be successful.
Thank you. Item number 10, County Manager's Report number 4 for 2016.
Can I interject? One of the things I tried to do is actually include Moon Ridge as well, because we have a lot of children of farm workers. Yeah. But we weren't able to do that because the Samtrans bus stops there. So we'll try and promote that as well, and maybe take the bus into Half Moon Bay, take the shuttle up to the park.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Maltby.
Mr. President, members of the board, you have my report. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Does anyone have any questions for the County Manager?
I did.
Supervisor Groom?
I forgot what it was, but I'll catch up later.
I was pleased to see that Srija Surveys, and I can't pronounce her last name, is...
Srinivasan.
Yes, is going to be the interim deputy health leader, and her brother is competing for a seat on the Supreme Court, so very exciting.
Her brother was an intern in our office the early 90s.
So it's quite a family.
We have a pretty good track record of putting people on a Supreme Court.
Yeah. Right. We're kind of a feeder system, I think, for the Supreme Court.
I guess we are.
Justice Byers.
No other questions? No. Okay. Yeah. Very good. Board member reports. Supervisor Groom?
I want to ask us to adjourn in memory today of actually one of my dearest friends. Marie Whitehill died a couple of weeks ago of ALS, and she had her own business. She was in the banking business for years, then had her own business. Great sports fan, loved the Giants, loved the Sharks. I hate to say this, but she loved the University of Southern California. And but for me, her truest, her best was being on the San Mateo Police Activities League, and the work that she did for PAL to help raise money was just exceptional. And she just cared so much about the kids and did so much work to help us, and she will be really missed by all the PAL families, as well as her husband Bob and her daughter Cindy.
I thought I'd give a... Is it finished, Supervisor?
Yeah.
Okay, I was just going to do a quick update midway through our Jobs, Housing Gap Task Force. I know that it's been kind of in the news lately, but the county staff planning team, they meet actually weekly, and they spend many hours ensuring that the process is of the highest quality. So I want to really thank, it's being led by Deputy County Manager Peggy Jensen, and is primarily staffed by Jessica Mullen. And the other key players, of course, are Ken Cole for our Director of Housing, Steve Monowitz, our Planning Director, John Evelyn, County Counsel's Office, and then the board staff from our office is Maya Perkins from Supervisor Slocum's office and Sarah Rosendahl from my office. And our consultants have been and are Pat Brown and Bill Lowell. And we've had participation from about 50 individuals representing each and every city in the county. We have housing developers and housing advocates, social service agencies, and we've been pretty successful in getting the larger businesses, so we have the business community involved as well. In the first few meetings, we've really actually been developing an understanding and really kind of acknowledged the common problem of the crisis and identified the key issues that the group is interested in focusing on. And some of the key issues are creative housing solutions. There's something called auxiliary housing units, essentially like second units in some of our residential areas. So we've looked at land policies, land use policies, housing incentives, homelessness, affordability, displacement solutions, transportation, infrastructure plans, affordable housing funding, state and federal contributions, and issues that cut across like community engagement and advocacy. Currently, we're really in the learning phase, so our study sessions essentially have the opportunity to hear from experts and discuss issues with a variety of people involved in the task force, learning about a range of potential solutions, and we've heard from members of the task force that are really generally in support of the options that we've discussed. But we've all felt and feel that there's really a disconnect with the community, that many people in the community really support a concept, the idea of housing, but not when it comes to personal issues. So what happens is that we find that communities feel that it's going to, or fear that it will negatively impact their quality of life, and we're trying to figure out some way of dealing with NIMBYism in the communities, which we have all felt. So moving into our work sessions, we'll be diving deeper into potential solutions, strategize on what solutions are really appropriate for San Mateo County, draft a menu of options for the use of the community that include what we've heard and some new ideas. And a key challenge across all solutions will be how we will discuss how are we going to be able to get community support as opposed to what we see today, and oftentimes is just really vociferous and active community opposition. So when we actually wrap it up, we expect to have a menu of options by June, and we'll explore how to continue the energy in these convenings. Huge benefits of the task force, really, it's conversations across jurisdictions and the support for creative thinking really around this crisis. There, of course, are private tools and support for continuing engagement at the city level, because most of the decisions related to housing crisis are really made there. There are a lot of other conversations that go on besides this, the task force. So I know Supervisor Slocum has been meeting with hundreds of North Fair Oaks residents. I've met a couple of times with the clergy on meetings in San Mateo. And the cities are they're looking at affordable housing options, including discussions of commercial and or residential linkage fees. And this is going to be coming, these commercial and residential linkage fees will also be coming to this board in the next few months. The San Mateo County, I just mentioned that we've had the clergy housing summits. There have been a couple of them that I've attended. They're engaging the clergy around solutions. And what we're trying to do with the clergy, because they do have moral authority, is to get them to work with our communities to have to deal with this issue of the community outrage about affordable housing in their community. People are so afraid of change that we have to engage our community to get them to basically be part of the solution here. So most recently, last night, I know with Congresswoman Spears' town hall, we had all of our staff attend those meetings just to get a feel for what was going to come out of the town hall meetings. And so what I understand that it was. We anticipated there would be a large crowd. In fact, it was, and included tenants, landlords, and the clergy. And Congresswoman Spear, she did attend the Jobs Gap Task Force meeting in February, and her message then, and I think it was exactly as I understand it, was the same as last night. It was to emphasize the seriousness of the housing crisis and recognize the need to work together to solve both short-term and long-term solutions. And I do want to point out that many of the issues raised as potential solutions were really, really are being currently developed through a process the county began really almost a year ago at our board study sessions, and also being thoroughly examined by a job housing gap task force. And one of the things that I know Ken Cole, our director of housing, has raised the issue of the reduction of Section 8 vouchers. It really is a federal issue that perhaps Congresswoman Spear can help. And one of the things that I'd like to see with those Section 8 vouchers is that they be benchmarked with the cost of living in a given community like San Francisco and San Mateo County. A voucher may be fine in Stanislaus County or Monterey County, but it's not. It really doesn't come up to the standard of San Mateo County. So if we can have them benchmarked to the cost of living, that would be extremely helpful. And finally, I want to also mention Maria Katch, and she is the 97-year-old woman who's threatened with eviction from her home of 66 years. The issue was raised during our Jobs Housing Gap Task Force planning meeting the other day, and Warren and I asked Ken Cole, our housing director, to reach out to her to find out if we could help her, and also to reach out to Aging and Adult Services. And I know that there are some updates since then. I'm sure that Supervisor Pine, I understand, has also reached out to her. And I also heard this morning that a number of people in the newspaper released reports that Joe Kitchet's office had Nancy Feynman go talk to her to see if they could stave off the eviction. And I gathered that there's also been some crowdfunding that's in a neighborhood of about $20,000. And there have been people who've come forward to offer other kinds of service as well. So I guess maybe Supervisor Pine has reached out and has some additional information about that situation.
Thank you, Supervisor Horsley.
Let me just follow on to Supervisor Horsley's remarks. So it was just completely coincidental, of course, that this eviction of the 97-year-old and 85-year-old who lived together in the home in Burlingame kind of came into the press the same day that Congresswoman Spear was convening her meeting. With respect to the two women in Burlingame, the county is reaching out to try to help in every way, and it has been remarkable to see the public reaction. This GoFundMe meter keeps running up higher and higher, and there are a lot of people focused on trying to help these two individuals. With respect to the meeting last night, I actually did have a chance to attend. It was a very large crowd. Again, in part because of all the news that had been generated by the situation in Burlingame. And Congresswoman Spear, her main points was, as I'm sure the task force has heard, is that we need to work together to solve both the short and long-term solutions. She really emphasized that there was a short-term emergency in what she called unconscionable increases in rents of 50 or 100%, and then emphasized the longer-term needs for more housing. So there were about 25 speakers, kind of equally divided with the tenants and the landlords, and the clergy did come and made their remarks. So it brought a lot of people out, and I would say the discussion was, while it was emotional, it was people I think were a little more respectful than we sometimes see in these forums.
Thank you, Supervisor Pine. Supervisor Tissier.
Thank you. Just quickly, actually it's happening this morning. There's a Age Well Drive Smart seminar in Half Moon Bay as we speak. Our next one is Thursday, April 28th in South San Francisco at the Magnolia Center, and another one in May 19th in Belmont at the Twin Pines Senior Center. And then just a friendly reminder of Disaster Preparedness Day. The 12th annual will be on Saturday, June 11th at the county fairgrounds, and parking will be free and admission free for those arriving before 11 a.m. that day. That's it.
Supervisor Horsley.
I just want to add one more thing. I was just thinking about one of the items on today's agenda was the HIP housing apartment acquisition. And one of the things that we asked Ken Cole to reach out to was HIP housing as well, because the particular building, I don't know if it's going to be ready in time, but there were 4 apartments that are vacant. And so we asked him to see if it was possible that one of those units would be available to Mrs. Hatch and her roommate.
Nice. Very nice. Anything else? No? I guess it comes the time now where we adjourn to closed session. We will report out when that session is concluded. And just another reminder that at 1:30 we do service awards today. Mr. Byers, could you report out from closed session, please?
Yes, President Slocum happily will report out. The board, in a unanimous 5-0 vote, took action to join the amicus curiae brief being led by several cities and counties around the country, including the city of New York, Los Angeles, and Birmingham, in the case of U.S. versus Texas. That is actually currently pending before the U.S. Supreme Court and is due to be briefed shortly. The amicus curiae effort would urge the Supreme Court to sustain President Obama's executive action that would provide immigration relief to an estimated 4 million undocumented immigrants who either have children born here in the United States as citizens or themselves came to the United States as children and have established themselves in the United States prior to 2010. So that was a unanimous vote, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Byers. We are adjourned. Thank you all.